Just a quick one today, a simple Christmas scene. Let's start with the sleigh, seems like the best place to start. As you can see, I started brush painting it but quickly got fed up. It was taking too long and I'm extremely impatient, so I pulled out the airbrush. All the models were primed with Mr. Surface of 1500 black in a 50-50 mix with Mr. Leveling Thinner. Black probably wasn't the best choice, but it was pre-mixed and ready, so it is what it is. I suppose I should also mention all the models you see in this video are 3D printed and the links are in the description. These were printed on my Anycubic Photon using Monocure Rapid Grey resin. I'm using AK Red 740 for this, straight out of the bottle with a dropper retarder. As you'll see throughout the video, the retarder doesn't do much and I still have it clogging up and drying on the tip. Every so often I'll blast out some paint on the paper to clear it. Acrylic paint in Australian Queensland summer, it's a very annoying mix. To finish the sleigh off, I gave it a quick dry brush with Vallejo model colour Gold 7996 and the sleds were done with the same gold. I didn't bother with any weathering or washes or anything because I couldn't be bothered. Onto the reindeer. All of them were painted with a bit of AK White 738 here and there, mostly under them seeing real deer have the most white on their bellies. As you'll see later on, I did some white on their sides and backs randomly as well to give some tonal variation for later colours. Because we have 9 reindeer, I split them up into groups of 3 and painted them randomly with AK Raff Medium Sea Grey 2013, AK Medium Rust 707 and AK Shadow Rust 710. Unfortunately, when assembling this I dropped and broke one of the grey reindeers, so I had to replace it with a spare I had painted with Medium Rust. They don't look at all realistic, more like store-bought toys, but I didn't really want to spend a whole lot of time on these. I could have made life easier and painted them all the same colour, but I thought as a whole they'd look better with a bit of variation. To finish the reindeer off, I painted the antlers with apple barrel chocolate. The hooves were a mix of chocolate and black to make them darker. The eyes and nose were done with a black marker because I couldn't be bothered painting them, and Rudolph's nose was done with the same red as the sleigh. I could have made them a little more detailed with some dry brushing and other techniques, but again, I just couldn't be bothered. Finally, the reindeer were completed with some basic harnesses. This was made from low-tack painter's tape and painted with AK Brown Leather 3031, then cut into 1mm thick strips, stuck onto them, then a small drop of super glue was added to make sure the tape stayed in place. final assembly of the sleigh and reindeer, I used some wire to attach all the reindeer to each other and the sleigh, then used the same painted tape I used for the harnesses to make some reins. Now on to the fat man himself. First off, sorry for the focus of this clip. I always use manual focus because I hate how autofocus jumps around all the time. With this being such a small model, it was hard to paint him while keeping him in focus, especially with his face. Santa's suit was painted in the same way as the sleigh, with AK Red 740. I wasn't being overly careful because he has next to no details anyway, and this is just a base coat. All the smaller details will be brush painted later on. He was pretty easy to paint aside from being so tiny. I started off with giving him a very light grey beard so it wouldn't blend into the white trim of his jacket and hat. This was just done with some cheap apple barrel black and white paint. His face was painted with AK Highlight Flesh 3013. This was very thin to not cover up what little detail there is on his face. The detail was still covered up though. Now, although you can't see it very well, his cheeks and nose were also given a touch of AK Light Flesh 3012 to make him look jolly. Or alcoholic, depending on your view. His gloves and boots were done with apple barrel black, and as I already said, the trim of his jacket and hat were done with apple barrel white. I didn't take too much care about being really precise about how I painted the details because he was so tiny anyway, and it was a pain in the arse. I got most of this video done before I'd realised I'd forgotten the all-important sack of toys. I know, how could I? This is pretty simple. It's just some fabric stuffed with cotton, then tied with a bit of gold thread. As you can see, the fabric I used isn't actually red but pink, so what I'm doing is painting it. Painting fabric that won't be handled is pretty easy. First wet it. It doesn't have to be dripping wet, just damp will do. Then all I used was some very watered down apple barrel red mixed with a little bit of black to darken it slightly. The reason you wet it and use thin paint is so the paint can be absorbed into the fibres rather than sitting on top. It makes it more resilient to coming off because it's soaked in. Now for the base. This was just made from some 3mm MDF, glued and sprayed black. It's a bit of a rat's nest with the wires, but I thought I'd add some LEDs because, well, I can. The LEDs are held in with some dots of hot glue and some more on the wires to keep them down and out of the way. The white squares you can see is just some double-sided tape which will hold the background. Spoiler alert, the tape didn't hold very well. On to the wiring. As I said, it's a bit of a rat's nest, but it does work. All the negatives are tied to one bit of solid core wire and positives to the other. This was done very quickly because I thought it would be temporary and I'd remove the LEDs after the video was done, so I wasn't too concerned if it was ugly, but now it's done, I can't be bothered removing them. The solder joints are horrible because the solder I used was utter crap. I'll fix it up later, but luckily it's only LEDs. If it was something more high powered, I would fix it immediately. And here we can see, even though the solder joints are horrible, they work. As I said, there is a background. One of my friends made it for me because I'm horrible with digital artwork. The LEDs were placed in specific spots to line up with stars on the background. Unfortunately, I couldn't think of anything I had on hand to light up the Aurora Borealis. Green LEDs didn't look right, but I might end up painting it with glow-in-the-dark paint later on. As you can see, adding everything was pretty simple because it's all held together with wire. I added a few toothpicks to the sleigh and a couple of the reindeer, which I painted black and then super glued in place in pre-drilled holes. And here's the finished scene. I ended up adding some cotton and cotton balls for clouds because it needed something extra. And I also tried to add some motion with cotton trailing off the sleigh and the reindeer. It's nothing too crazy, a kid could build this in an afternoon, but it looks decent enough. So that's it. If you liked the video, give us a thumbs up, give us a sub and all that other whiny YouTube crap, and if you didn't like the video, well, I don't particularly care. Alright, see ya.